welcome back. It's time once again for another episode of SLMA Radio. If it has to do with sales lead management or sales lead marketing, it probably starts here with the SLMA Radio Show, brought to you by the Sales Lead Management Association. The show that started the whole ball rolling here at the Funnel Radio Network, and the man who's still pushing it down the hill as it gathers speed. Chasing that ever elusive answer is Jim Overmare. Hey, Jim.
Thank you, Paul Roberts. Paul Roberts is our producer for the Funnel Radio Channel shows. The subject today for our program is how to fast track your business with organic growth. This has really come out of a brand new book that a good friend has published, and a podcaster and radio host on one of our programs, Laura Patterson. Laura wrote this book, Fast Track Your Business, Customer-Centric Approach to Accelerate Market Growth. It's in paperback, and it came out January 27th, 2020. It's available through Kindle at $9.99, paperback $17.99, and probably other fine booksellers. Laura, welcome.
Thank you. And Jim, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be back on the Funnel Radio.
Well, very briefly, Laura is an author of 3 previous books: Going Fishing, A Guide for Finding, Hooking, Keeping, and Growing Profitable Customers; Measure What Matters, Reconnecting, Marketing to Business Goals, that's sold out as well as the previous one; and Marketing Metrics in Action. Today, she's at the helm of Vision Edge Marketing, founded in 1999, and is recognized as one of the pioneers and authorities in market performance management, MPM, a discipline that I really have been following since I met her. The company specializes in helping companies apply data, metrics, and proven best-in-class practices to improve marketing effectiveness, deliver business impact, and enable business decision-making. Vision Edge Marketing enables organizations to accelerate revenue and create a competitive advantage by leveraging data, analytics, processes, and alignment to address marketing accountability and operations. I believe that Laura is about 7 or 8 years ahead of her time when she started this company, because today, if you're not into the data management, if you're not into the accountability, if you're not measuring all of your programs in marketing, you're going to be behind, because your competitors are really going to take you to the woodshed. Now, Laura, tell us about your book. Can you give us an overview of the book? I've got it in front of me. I've read about 3/4 of it, and I'm still coming through the last couple chapters. In the book, we've got about 190 pages. Give us an overview of the book.
Sure. So the book is about a framework that we created 20 years ago in Vision Edge Marketing. It's called the Circle of Traction. We created this framework to help our customers have a repeatable process. As you know, I'm all about process. They could use to get more traction in the marketplace. I was making a presentation to a longtime customer. In fact, I'd worked with this customer, the person at this company, in 3 previous companies. So he was having a growth summit. And he called me up and he said, I'm having a growth summit. Can you come bring that wheel thing that you have, that you've shared with me over the years? Make a presentation. I'm having this growth summit so I can get everybody on the same page about growth. And I said, sure. I went and did it. It was almost 2 years ago, in the next month or so. And afterwards he said, you should maybe think about turning that into a book. It's a really good methodology. And I've used it now several times and it's been really helpful. And so that really was the seed for taking the Circle of Traction and crafting it into something that customers that we have today, and hopefully customers of the future, and anyone else that's interested in organic growth could apply. So it's very much a practical, no-nonsense guide to growing your business.
You've said in your book, and I know personally, and here listening to you on other podcasts, and you had your own podcast on this channel, is that organic growth is much better than acquisition growth. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. So first of all, organic growth is becoming pretty much a top line priority. I imagine some of your listeners are very familiar with PwC, and they do a study, a CEO study, and have been doing one, I think, since the late 90s. And their most recent study asked the question, what's the most important priorities that are going to help you deliver on revenue in the next 12 months? And the number 2 priority was organic growth. This seems to be a recurring theme, and it's turning into pretty much an intentional mandate, a deliberate action. The question becomes, why do that? A study that was done a while back by John Cummings, he did a lot of research, and he found that companies that grow organically do much better on shareholder returns and revenue growth. Much, much better. McKinsey found very similar results when they did a study. Companies that can figure out how to grow organically tend to be more successful, have better returns for shareholders, and just grow faster in all the segments that they are operating in.
Okay, so you've answered really the first 2 questions, an overview of the book and why you wrote it. Now, who's the audience for this book?
Anybody who wants to grow their business. Although I will say that my background, as you know, and the background of Vision Edge Marketing is predominantly B2B. So I'm sure that people who are reading it will see that there is a strong B2B slant. But the book goes through a process that any company that wants to grow can apply. And the most important component is that it's about being customer-centric. And while customer centricity has been kind of a buzzword, I know we've talked about that before, the notion of being customer-centric has been around a while. I mean, there's been people writing about it since the beginning of the 2000s. Don Peppers has been talking about the transformation from product-centric to customer-centric a very long time. But what does that really mean, and how do you really do that? And how do you actually bring that to life? I think is a lot harder for many organizations, especially product-centric companies. And whether that's in the B2C world that's product-centric or it's in the B2B world, that problem, I think, persists for any company.
Okay. Now, this book has 11 chapters. Mm-hmm. It has upstream marketing, the actual elements, customer and opportunity insights, business outcomes and performance, several chapters on innovation and strategy, segmentation, positioning, plan and execution, operational excellence, and performance and optimization, and the final, pulling it all together with coming full circle. So this is a roadmap for those companies and their management teams. I don't see it as doing any good just to have one person read it. One person, the marketing manager, can read it. If you don't get other people on board, truly on board, either the whole marketing department, sales and marketing management, the CFO, and the company president, then you can implement part of it, but to be really successful, you need the whole team on board. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You are so on target. So this is really not a marketing book. This is really a business book. And this is really meant for leadership to have to your great reference, a roadmap. The reason it has such a very strong marketing orientation is that I truly believe that marketing is the engine of growth. And I also believe that good marketers who are strategic members of the team are oriented toward growth, not just pipeline, but growth. And so those marketing organizations are critical members of the C-suite team, of the CEO's team. They're looking and expecting their marketing leaders to help them achieve this mandate, this organic growth mandate.
I would bet that some people would say a sales manager, well, they're great for making off-the-cuff comments. Well, of course we want to grow the company, and of course we want to make it organic growth. What are you talking about? I mean, that's what I do every day. Of course we want all these things. That's what our goal is supposed to be. But the reality is, wishing isn't getting. Just mouthing the platitudes and then going back out and doing the same thing over and over again, scratching out a living in the marketplace, adding salespeople and some marketing programs, but not driving the whole company towards organic growth. I can see a CEO standing up, holding this book in his hands and saying, we're going to fast track this business. We are going to turn this into a customer-centric approach to accelerate market growth. And this is all in the cover of your book. I expect everything in this company to be based on our organic growth. I expect you to read this book, and then we're going to come back together and begin to execute this. This is not going to be a 1-week thing or a 3-month thing. It's going to be a 6-month thing and then a 2 or 3 year thing. If you don't believe in it, if you read the book and don't believe in it, stop by my office, drop off your resignation, I'll hire somebody that does. Is that the kind of thing that you're expecting out of this book and the readers of this book?
Well, I hope they won't ask for resignations, but having carried a bag in my career several times, and in a way I still do, right? I mean, at the helm of a company, clearly I play a critical role in the pipeline. And I know you can relate to this, especially those of us who really were on quotas. At the beginning of the month, you get a number, and at the end of the month, you've either made that month number or not. If you did, you're a hero. If you didn't, you're a goat. It could be a month, it could be a quarter, whatever the sales cycle might be, right? That selling is really about sales now. Organic growth doesn't always happen in the now. So pipeline and growth are not the same thing. And the chief revenue officer is really worried about the pipeline, and that's their job. And that's the job of the people who work for them. So you need other people in the team that are helping that sales team and the rest of the company think beyond that. And that's the whole concept of marketing with a capital M, as we talk about in the book, that good marketing organizations are not just thinking about what they can do in terms of generating opportunities into the pipeline, but rather they are really thinking about the role they can play in understanding and fulfilling customer needs, understanding what value is to a customer, doing what we call the upstream work so that the downstream is easier. And in the words of one of my favorite CEOs here in Austin, the point that Dave used to say is if the upstream is polluted, then the downstream is wasted. Can't do anything with it. A polluted upstream pollutes the downstream. So if you go fishing in a polluted downstream, you can't eat the fish. It would be bad for you. You want to make sure that the upstream is done well. The upstream is where marketing should be living. That's really about what's your company's value proposition and how are you going to direct the innovation process for long-term sustainable growth. And innovation isn't necessarily a product. It could be innovation of process or service. It's about really having solid insights into the customers and into the competition, into the market. And think of what the situation we're in right now. Marketing should be running a bunch of scenario analysis to figure out how do we navigate these turbulent times. The metrics of upstream are very different than the metrics of downstream. Metrics of upstream for marketing are things like category ownership and customer lifetime value and share of wallet. Downstream, you're looking at much different kinds of things that might be tied to demand with a little d, as opposed to demand, the really big D.
So it's really this organic growth up the capital M for marketing, which is the long-term play, not the short-term play. Certainly we've got to bring in the numbers every month, but if that's all we do is look at the short term, we're never going to grow the way we'd like to grow and bring real value to the customers.
Yeah, I think
the customers are going to know this. The customers will feel it every time if that's all you are is going back to the well and thinking short term.
Exactly. And I think we can all think of examples of that where you can be adding customers, but if you have customers going out the back door, you're not going to grow. And you could be, to your point, going back to the same well, but you've already exhausted that well. So where are you going to go next is a strategic question.
That makes perfect sense. I've asked you to highlight 2 of the chapters in the book that you find the most fascinating, the 2 that you loved writing, the 2 that you felt really set this book up away from others. So tell us, which 2 chapters did you pick?
Well, we've been talking about one, right, which is the whole notion of the upstream. I think that's one. But I think the other one that, of course, appeals to me, or maybe the other 2, is the plan and execute. Because lots of organizations move into execution mode very, very, very quickly. And you and I have talked about this before, that ready, fire, 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 aim.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so the chapter on plan and execute begins to make us think more about how the work of marketing connects the business to the customer, particularly the customer journey, which again is another buzzword. So many organizations today have gotten into this sort of internal process, whether you want to call it the waterfall or the MQL, SQL, SAL. In this chapter, we really talk more about how do you truly navigate and understand the customer journey and what the customer is doing and really use that as the basis for how you do everything else.
So this chapter says, plan and execute, maximize your marketing opportunities. The subheads are the work of marketing and functional alignment, creating your operational mission plans, using a customer journey map, which is something I really like, and several more areas, the metrics of success, executing plan elements, etc. Is it true? Is it still as true for you today as it was for me just even 3 years ago, that the majority of clients that you go into and talk to really don't have a yearly or a 3-year marketing and business plan?
What I see a lot is, and we do a lot of marketing plan reviews for our customers, and we do help a lot with marketing plans. We see a lot of plans that have a lot of activity in them that may be tied to some objectives that are very, very loose in terms of how performance or success is going to be measured. So, increase demand, improve awareness, whatever those are, that's very vague and ambiguous. They're rarely customer-centric in the way that the objectives are framed. And then it's just a list of things they're going to do, right, as tied to those objectives. Very rarely is there much strategy in the plan themselves. Or they think that PR might be the strategy, or maybe influencer is the strategy today, right? Those are certainly tactics that support programs, but those aren't necessarily marketing strategies.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key messages, and you and I have talked about this before, is it's not about alignment to each other. It is about alignment to the customer. And when I ask the organizations how they are aligned to the customer, that's not really how they think. They are not thinking about that. They're thinking about, how do we align sales and marketing? How do we align service and marketing, or so forth and so on? But alignment is about your strategy and your customer.
I can see why you're so insistent on this. I think the whole book, and I got up to chapter 8, by the way, in my journey through the book, but all the way through the book, you're talking about customer journey, and you've got examples of what you're doing.
First of all, just getting the vocabulary right. It's amazing to me how many things are labeled as a KPI, probably not correctly. The real critical thing is to be clear about how the organization measures its success, what it's willing to spend money on to change, what is it willing to invest in to achieve its success. And then those become the things that eventually are KPIs. So is it customer lifetime value? Is it category ownership? What are those types of things? And then how does the rest of the organization connect what it's doing into those, right? So that everyone is mobilized to the same measures. So you don't have a set of measures that begin to put departments or functions at odds with each other, but rather they're all going after the same brass ring, so to speak.
One last question. If someone reads this book, can they execute this from reading the book? Can they actually execute it on their own, or do they need a guide?
I wrote it with the idea that people could implement it on their own if they had the resources to do that. Again, if you don't have strong analytical expertise internally, you might be challenged with some of the things that require you to really derive insights, actionable insights from all the data that you have housed in your organization. If you don't know how to conduct good research, then that might be things that you want to be thinking about. If you don't know or have the ability to go and capture customer insights, talk to customers and do that in a way that will not sound like you're trying to pitch to them, but rather you're trying to learn from them. These are capabilities that companies need to have. The key thing, I think, is that the leadership team, which we talk about, all starts with culture, and the culture is one of the key aspects of what we call the axle in the book for the wheel. You have to have a culture that encourages everyone to be curious about the customer, to be passionate about the customer, to be focused on growth, right? To prioritize things that will derive the growth that the organization is trying to achieve. So if it's all about, I just need to fill the pipeline this month, then that's going to be a very different kind of culture than a culture that says, here's where we want to be successful over the course of some period of time, these are the customers that we want to serve. These are the markets that we want to win, right? Those are very different kinds of questions than just go get deals.
The next question is the CFO. How important is it to have the CFO on board?
The role of the CFO is evolving. Today, there are, just like in marketing, lots and lots of tools and other things that make it possible for the CFO's job to be a lot easier than it used to be years ago when they really had the labor to put together all the reports. But today, they don't need to do that. So many CFOs are becoming much more strategic and visionary in their and becoming almost lieutenants to the CEO. So my feelings are that one of the best partners for growth is the CFO. And I think they're one of the best partners, by the way, for marketing, because for organizations that may be data challenged, who knows the data better? Where can you get the best data, the data that's perceived as the truth of the company? It's all in the finance organization.
Well, considering how many CFOs end up by being the company president in major corporations and even smaller corporations, it's amazing how unprepared the CFO is to assume the growth responsibility of a company if they don't understand marketing, sales, and how to create a customer-centric company. So when I read this book, I said, this is a book that CFOs need to read and realize that they're in partnership with the marketing department as well as eventually sales. And when they are, it's going to be a very, very strong company.
I agree with you. And also, they need to be in a customer-centric organization. Obviously, there is a customer success focus, and the CFO, whomever is leading the charge on customer success, that person and the CFO also need to be very solid partners, because if you, down the road, how you are perceived by your customers is really important, because in today's world, word spreads quickly. Referrals are essential. They're part of the proof, part of the buying journey. So you've got to have really stellar relationships with customers.
Thank you for your time today. I know this doesn't totally do your book justice because there's a lot of information in here. It's a great read. I've been going through it a chapter at a time and then looking at the recaps at the end of the chapters. Thank you very much. And it helps a tremendous amount to go over what I've read. You call them the takeaways in there. And then there's always a little more copy after that, which expands a little bit more on what was in the chapter. So it's very, very useful. Laura Patterson from Vision Edge Marketing. How does someone reach you if they'd like to talk more about the book or more about how this fast track process works?
Sure. Love email, Laura P. That's Laura P as in Patterson at Vision Edge Marketing, all one word, all spelled out.com. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. There's another way. I'm pretty much answer to most anything these days, I think, like the rest of us, and would love to have a chance to connect with folks, answer questions. We set up free 20-minute conversations all the time. You can do that on our Contact Us page on our website at visionedgemarketing.com. Yes, would love to have follow-up conversations with anyone who's interested in this process.
For people who don't know it, you've been the host of Ready, Set, Grow, which is a podcast that's still available through the Sales Lead Management Association on the Funnel Radio Group, right?
Yes.
And you also have another podcast that you're doing. I was listening to this morning when I should have been getting ready for our own shows. In any case, but I was listening to your podcast this morning. So people can also listen to these stories and real live people who are growing their companies organically. Many of those people were the basis of some of your chapters in your book, if I remember correctly.
You are exactly right. And it was such a blessing, really, Jim, that you gave me the opportunity to do Ready, Set, Grow, because those stories continue to help me think about how can I bring Circle of Traction to life. And they really help bring it to life and give it some color. And the other thing that was really important to me was not to create something that would be really arduous to get through. So I try to make something that's a fairly quick read with really practical ideas and action steps. And David Altunian, who wrote the foreword and helped with the launch of the book, who I just have such tremendous respect and admiration for, he commented on the fact that you can get a lot out of this book without it having to be a huge undertaking for a read. So, it's not so big that you don't want to pick it up, but it's not so thin that there's nothing in it.
Well, I like to read books, and especially business books, one chapter at a time, and then go back and reread it again. I love to get a lot of these books on Kindle. Yours, in this particular case, I have both. I've got one on Kindle and one in my hand. Somebody might say, well, why do you do that? Well, I do it because I like to underline in Kindle as I read books and reread them, and then I get the notes, which help me review the book and remember the things that I find the most important. So you've got a great book here. Laura Patterson, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Jim. Really appreciate the support.